we did a whole process of examining key data points across our student life cycle. And Patty, you and I talked about this a little bit before the webinar. We back in 2022, National University adopted the Loss and Momentum Framework as our framework for student success. Loss and Momentum Framework originated with Achievement by Design, funded by the Gates Foundation, largely in the community college sector, but it is a really clear, straightforward, parsimonious framework for student success that looks across the student journey at four stages. When students connect to the institution from first interest, expression of interest, up until the point of application, entry, which is that point of application into like the first four classes, progress, which is the majority of the student journey, up to where they're nearing completion, about three-quarters of the way to completion, and then completion as the final stage. And that is finishing that last mile of coursework, graduating, and moving on into the next steps of what's ever next for them in their journey. So those four stages, we started to look at data, all the data that we had across those four stages. And we did workshops with each individual school and with our major operational units to examine that data and start to look for the opportunities for us to build momentum for students. Where could we speed them along? And then where could we also mitigate loss, whether it's loss in momentum, loss in sense of belonging, confidence, or whether it's actual attrition. Two of the key data points that came up for us as we did the deep dive and we started looking into that. One, because we are who we are as an institution, largely non-traditional, I mentioned to you that we have very few of those first-time, full-time students. What we learned was that it is a growing population, although small, it's a growing population for us. But for us, most students come in with transfer credits. The students who came in with low or no transfer credits were at significantly higher risk of not progressing, not progressing into or beyond those early critical first courses. We are like everyone else, right? Where the first courses matter the most in securing that student's likelihood of ultimately completing. For us, it's the fourth. They have to, really, if they make it through that fourth course, then they have a multiplier of a higher likelihood of succeeding. And that's about a quarter or a semester for most traditional institutions. So it tracks, right? But for us, those students with low or no transfer credits were really at risk. That was a key point. It really helped us dial in the supports that we were going to need to offer that. A number of things came out of this. One, we launched a whole peer navigator network, peer-based support that was built upon the same principles and the model of supplemental instruction. We know supplemental instruction is a well-documented, evidence-based, effective strategy. We've been deploying this in our innovative way in a largely online environment and across undergraduate and graduate and doctoral programming. And so doing that really helped, and with a focus especially on the first four classes and our general education, leaning in, offering that kind of support. We're launching a new orientation. We've definitely been tracking on those low, no transfer students. And a number of our schools have built retention committees. So we've been doing all kinds of work, but zeroing in on this, this one specific thing was really important to us and has in fact dramatically that focus on that whole loss momentum journey has improved our persistence rates significantly and really lowered our attrition rates, especially over the last year. The other thing I want to point out is when we looked at completion, that final stage, what we learned was that, about 14% of our students who left us were leaving in those final, like in the final mile, the last mile of their student journey. And they were leaving in good academic standing. And so what we started to do was we started to identify and track, number one, those students who had left us with with 75% of their degree requirements completed. And we started a recruit them back campaign where we reached out to them for reentry, and tried to overcome whatever barriers were there, largely life and logistics, affordability, things like that, recruit them back and help get them over the last mile. And then also now tracking students as they approach that critical milestone of being about 75% of the way to completion and making sure that we know who they are, that we're watching for any signs of risk, and that we're ensuring that we're carrying them and helping them make it through those final courses without having to leave for life logistics, affordability, and things like that. So, two of the things that a close look at our data at the individual school, we call them schools, college, program level, and starting to dig in and do some of that root cause analysis and solutioning there.